Captain Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Stellar Harmony, watching the stars change from bright points to long streaks as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Around him, his crew of 12 different alien species worked at their stations, checking readings and preparing for what they might find. "We have arrived at the coordinates." "Captain," said Lieutenant Valina, her blue skin glowing softly in the dim bridge lighting. She was Vilthari like the captain, but much younger. This was only her third deep space mission. Zethkar nodded and looked at the main screen. Empty space greeted them with only distant stars visible. But something was wrong. The energy readings that had brought them here were stronger than ever, yet there was nothing to see. "Science Officer Colthene, what are your sensors telling us?" Zethkar asked. Dr. Colthene, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, worked quickly at her station. Her species, the Mordan, were known throughout the galaxy for their scientific minds. "Captain, I am reading massive amounts of metal debris scattered throughout this area. The computer is having trouble making sense of it all." "Debris? From what?" "That is the strange part, sir. The metal signatures match at least 7 different civilizations, but that should be impossible. These signatures are from species that have been extinct for thousands of years." Zethkar felt his chest tighten. In his 40 years of exploration for the Galactic Confederation, he had never encountered anything like this. The Confederation had mapped most of the galaxy, and the edge territories were supposed to be empty except for a few primitive worlds. "Put it on the main screen," he ordered. The view changed, and suddenly the empty space was filled with floating pieces of metal. Massive chunks of what had once been starships drifted slowly through space. Some pieces were as large as small moons, while others were no bigger than shuttlecraft. The debris field stretched as far as their sensors could reach. "My gods," whispered Navigation Officer Thekron, his insect-like eyes reflecting the light from the screen. "It looks like the aftermath of a massive battle." "Not one battle," Colthene corrected, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "Multiple battles. Captain, I am identifying ship designs from the Zephyri Dominion, the Mordan Empire, the Ethereal Collective, and at least 4 other extinct civilizations. These ships fought in wars that ended before most of our species even developed space travel." Chief Engineer Bractos, a large bear-like creature from Ursi Prime, growled softly. "How did all this wreckage end up in the same place? These civilizations never fought each other. They lived in different parts of the galaxy and died out at different times." Zethkar studied the debris field carefully. Something about it bothered him, but he could not put his finger on what it was. "Colthene, scan deeper into the system. Are there any planets here?" "Scanning now, Captain." She worked at her station for several minutes, her 4 arms moving across different controls. "Yes, sir. There is a star system about 6 hours away at our current speed. I am reading 4 planets, with the 3rd one showing signs of life." "What kind of life?" "Advanced life, Captain. I am detecting cities, power sources, and what appears to be active technology. There are also artificial structures in orbit around the planet." The bridge fell silent again. Zethkar felt his heart beating faster. A living civilization at the edge of the galaxy, surrounded by the wreckage of extinct species. This discovery would change everything the Confederation knew about galactic history. "Set course for the inhabited planet," he ordered. "But keep our weapons ready and our shields up. I want to know what we are dealing with before we get too close." As the Stellar Harmony moved deeper into the system, the crew worked to analyze the debris field. Each piece of wreckage told a story of ancient wars and lost civilizations. Some ships showed signs of energy weapon damage, while others had been torn apart by physical impacts. The variety of weapons and damage types suggested battles fought with technologies that the current Confederation could barely understand. "Captain," called Communications Officer Zixara, her tentacles moving rapidly over her console, "I am picking up electromagnetic signals from the planet. Radio transmissions, data streams, and what appears to be a planetary communication network. Can you decode any of it?" "Working on it, sir. The signals are using mathematical principles that should be universal, but the language is completely unknown. I have never seen anything like it." Hours passed as they traveled toward the planet. The crew worked in shifts, trying to understand what they had found. The debris field continued around them. A graveyard of ships from civilizations that had ruled the galaxy long before any of their species had even existed. As they got closer to the planet, more details became clear. The world was blue and green, with white clouds swirling around it. It looked peaceful and beautiful, nothing like what Zethkar had expected to find at the center of such a massive graveyard. "Orbital structures coming into view," reported Valina from her station. "Captain, these are not like anything in our databases." The main screen showed a planet surrounded by space stations and orbital platforms. But these were not the simple metal constructions that most species built. These structures seemed to be made from a combination of different materials and technologies. Some parts looked familiar while others were completely alien. "Colthini, analyze those structures," Zethkar ordered. "Already on it, Captain." "This is incredible. Those orbital stations appear to be built using technology from multiple different civilizations. I am seeing Zephyri energy systems moored in armor plating, ethereal collective artificial gravity generators, and components I cannot even identify. How is that possible?" "I do not know, sir. It is as if someone collected the best technology from all these extinct civilizations and combined them into new designs." Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the bridge. "Captain!" shouted Tactical Officer Gronmax, his rocky skin changing color with excitement. "Multiple contacts approaching from the planet. I count at least 20 ships, but they are not showing up on our sensors normally. It is like they are partially invisible." Zethkar gripped the arms of his command chair. "Are they hostile?" "Unknown, sir. Their weapons are not targeting us, but their technology is unlike anything I have ever seen. These ships are using stealth systems that should not be possible." The approaching ships became visible on the main screen as they dropped their stealth fields. They were sleek and dangerous looking, with hull designs that seemed to blend elements from many different species. Like the orbital stations, they appeared to be built from technologies that should not exist together. "Incoming transmission," announced Zixara. They are speaking in the same unknown language as the planetary signals, but they are also transmitting universal mathematical codes that indicate peaceful intentions. "Put them on screen," Zethkar ordered. The main screen changed to show a being that looked surprisingly similar to some of the species in the Confederation, but different in ways that were hard to define. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with forward-facing eyes, but its skin was a pale color that Zethkar had never seen before. The being was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform decorated with symbols that meant nothing to any of them. "Greetings," the being said in perfect Confederation standard, though with an accent none of them recognized. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. Welcome to our system. We have been expecting you." The bridge crew exchanged surprised looks. How could these beings speak their language? And what did the Admiral mean by saying they had been expected? "I am Captain Zethkar of the Galactic Confederation vessel Stellar Harmony," he replied carefully. "We are an exploration ship mapping the Outer Rim territories. We detected unusual energy signatures and came to investigate." Admiral Chen smiled, showing white teeth. "Of course you did, Captain. Please forgive our caution in approaching your ship. We so rarely receive visitors in this part of the galaxy. Would you be interested in a diplomatic meeting? We have much to discuss." Zethkar looked around at his crew. This was exactly the kind of situation that first contact protocols were designed for, but something felt wrong about the whole encounter. How had these humans learned Confederation standard? How had they known the Stellar Harmony was coming? And what was the connection between their advanced technology and the debris field of extinct civilizations? "We would be honored to meet with you, Admiral Chen," he said finally. "Perhaps you could explain how all this ancient wreckage came to be in your system." The Admiral's smile never changed, but something cold flickered in her eyes for just a moment. "Oh, Captain, that is a very long story, one that I think you will find quite interesting. Shall we say in 2 hours? My ship can dock with yours, or you are welcome to visit our flagship." "We will meet on our ship," Zethkar decided quickly. He wanted the home field advantage, small as it might be. "Excellent. I look forward to our conversation, Captain. There is so much that your Confederation does not know about galactic history. So very much indeed." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in uncomfortable silence. Outside the viewports, the debris field of extinct civilizations continued to drift through space, while the mysterious human ships maintained their positions around the Stellar Harmony. Zethkar stood up from his command chair and walked to the large viewport at the front of the bridge. Somewhere out there were answers to questions he was not sure he wanted to ask. The humans claimed to have been expecting them, but how was that possible? And why did he have the growing feeling that his ship and crew had just walked into a carefully prepared trap? Colthane, he said without turning around. Begin a detailed analysis of everything we have seen so far. I want to know exactly what kind of technology these humans possess and how they came to have it. Yes, Captain. Should I also prepare a message drone to send back to Confederation space? Zethkar thought about it for a long moment. Standard procedure called for regular reports during deep space exploration missions, but something told him that sending a message might not be a good idea right now. Not yet, he said finally. Let us see what Admiral Chen has to tell us first, but prepare the drone anyway. I have a feeling we may need it soon. As the crew prepared for the diplomatic meeting, none of them noticed the small, almost invisible sensor pods that had attached themselves to their hull during the approach. The humans were already listening to everything they said and monitoring everything they did. Admiral Chen had been truthful about one thing. There was indeed much that the Confederation did not know about galactic history. Very soon, Captain Zethkar and his crew would begin to learn some very uncomfortable truths about the real rulers of the galaxy. 2 hours later, Captain Zethkar stood in the main conference room of the Stellar Harmony, watching as Admiral Chen and her escort stepped through the airlock. The human leader moved with the confidence of someone who had been in command for many years. But there was something about her that made Zethkar uncomfortable. She was shorter than most of the alien crew members, but she carried herself as if she owned the ship. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight style, and her uniform was made from materials that seemed to shift color slightly in the light. Most disturbing of all, her eyes seemed to take in every detail of the ship's interior as she walked. Captain Zethkar, she said, extending her hand in what appeared to be a human greeting gesture. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. It has been quite some time since we had visitors from the inner galaxy. Zethkar carefully shook her hand, noting that her grip was firm and her skin was surprisingly warm. Admiral Chen, may I introduce my senior staff? This is Science Officer Dr. Colthane, Chief Engineer Bractos, and Tactical Officer Gronmax. A pleasure to meet you all, Admiral Chen said, nodding to each of them. And may I present Commander Torres and Dr. Williams from my crew. The other two humans were as carefully composed as their leader. Commander Torres was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every weapon and defensive position in the room. Dr. Williams was a woman about the same age as Admiral Chen, carrying what appeared to be a portable computer device. As they all took seats around the conference table, Zethkar noticed that the humans positioned themselves so they could see all the exits. These were not simple explorers or peaceful scientists. These were military professionals who had been in dangerous situations before. Admiral, Zethkar began, we are very interested to learn about your people. The Galactic Confederation has no records of humans in our databases. How long have you been living in this system? Approximately 12,000 of your standard years, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Our people arrived here during what you might call the ancient period of galactic history. Dr. Colthane leaned forward, her forearms moving with excitement. 12,000 years? But Admiral, that would place your arrival during the time of the Great Civilization Wars, the same period when the Zephyri, Morden, and Ethereal Collective were fighting across the galaxy? Yes, Admiral Chen said, her smile never changing. Those were very interesting times. But how did you survive? Colthane continued. Those wars were so destructive that entire star systems were left empty. Most species from that period went extinct. We were fortunate to be located here at the edge of the galaxy, far from the main battle zones. Admiral Chen gestured toward the viewports where the debris field was still visible, though as you can see, some of the conflict did reach us eventually. Chief Engineer Bractos growled softly, a sign that he was thinking hard. Admiral, my sensors tell me that your ships use technology from multiple different civilizations. How did you come to possess such advanced systems? An excellent question, Engineer Bractos. When the ancient wars ended, we found ourselves surrounded by the wreckage of many different species. Rather than let such valuable technology go to waste, we studied it, learned from it, and eventually incorporated the best elements into our own designs. Commander Torres spoke for the first time, his voice deep and careful. We have always believed that knowledge should be preserved, not lost. The technologies of extinct civilizations represent thousands of years of scientific advancement. It would be criminal to let such achievements disappear. Tactical Officer Gronmax shifted uncomfortably in his chair, But some of those technologies were weapons of incredible power. The Mordoon Empire's planet crackers, the Zephyri reality warping drives. These were the very weapons that destroyed those civilizations. Indeed they were, Dr. Williams said, speaking up from where she had been quietly taking notes. Which is why we have spent so much time learning to use them safely. The original civilizations lacked the wisdom to control their own creations. We do not intend to repeat their mistakes. Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. The way the humans talked about these ancient weapons was too casual, too comfortable. It was like listening to children discuss toys, not beings talking about devices that could destroy entire worlds. Admiral Chen, he said carefully, may I ask how your people learned to speak Confederation Standard? Our languages are based on mathematical principles that should be unfamiliar to an isolated species. Oh, we have not been completely isolated, Captain. We have been watching the development of the current galactic civilizations for quite some time. Your languages, your technologies, your social structures, we find them all very fascinating. Watching us? Dr. Coltheny asked. From here? But this system is thousands of light years from Confederation space. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. Dr. Coltheny, you are clearly a brilliant scientist, but you are thinking in terms of current Confederation technology. We have access to much more advanced systems. She gestured to Dr. Williams, who activated her portable device. A holographic image appeared above the conference table, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of small red dots were scattered throughout the image, with many of them located in what Zethkar recognized as major Confederation star systems. What are those red dots? He asked, though he was beginning to suspect he did not want to know the answer. Observation posts, Commander Torres said matter-of-factly. We have been monitoring the development of your civilizations for centuries. It is important to keep track of how the younger species are progressing. The conference room fell silent. Zethkar looked around at his crew and saw his own shock reflected in their faces. The implications of what the humans were saying were staggering. If they were telling the truth, then humanity had been secretly watching the entire Confederation for hundreds of years. You have been spying on us, Gronmak said, his rocky skin darkening with anger. Such a harsh word, Admiral Chen replied. We prefer to think of it as guardianship. The galaxy can be a dangerous place, especially for young civilizations that have not yet learned to properly control their more destructive impulses. Guardianship? Zethkar stood up, his diplomatic composure finally cracking. Admiral, what you are describing is surveillance on a massive scale. No species has the right to watch over others without their knowledge or consent. Captain, please sit down, Admiral Chen said, her voice taking on a harder edge. You are reacting emotionally to information that requires careful consideration. Perhaps it would help if we explained why such monitoring became necessary. Zethkar remained standing, but he gestured for her to continue. Dr. Williams manipulated her device, and the holographic display changed to show historical images of massive space battles. Zethkar recognized some of them from ancient historical records, but others were completely unknown to him. These images show the final wars of the previous galactic cycle, Dr. Williams began. The Zephyri Dominion, the Mordoon Empire, the Ethereal Collective, and 7 other major civilizations all destroying each other in conflicts that lasted for thousands of years. The images were horrifying. Entire star systems burning, planets cracked in half, space filled with the debris of destroyed fleets. It was destruction on a scale that the current Confederation could barely imagine. The war began over trade disputes, Commander Torres explained. Simple disagreements that escalated into full conflict because none of the species involved were willing to compromise. Within a few centuries, they were using weapons that could destroy solar systems. But this is ancient history, Chief Engineer Bractos said. These wars ended thousands of years ago. What does this have to do with your surveillance of our civilizations? Admiral Chen stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the debris field. Engineer Bractos, those wars ended because every species involved destroyed themselves. The galaxy was left empty except for a few primitive worlds and scattered survivors. It took thousands of years for new civilizations to develop to the point where they could pose a similar threat. She turned back to face the conference table. Your Confederation represents the latest cycle of galactic development. Multiple species working together, sharing technology, exploring the galaxy. It is a beautiful thing to see. But history has a way of repeating itself. You think we will end up like them? Dr. Colton said quietly. You think our civilizations will eventually destroy each other? Not if we can help it, Dr. Williams replied. The observation posts allow us to monitor developing conflicts before they get out of hand. When necessary, we provide guidance to help young civilizations avoid the mistakes of their predecessors. Zethkar felt his blood run cold. What kind of guidance? Oh, small things, Admiral Chen said, returning to her seat. Anonymous tips about resources that can be shared instead of fought over. Technological advances that solve problems before they lead to wars. Sometimes we arrange for potential enemies to meet under circumstances that lead to friendship instead of conflict. You manipulate us, Gronmax growled. We guide you, Commander Torres corrected. There is a difference. We never force civilizations to make specific choices. We simply ensure that they have better options available when critical decisions must be made. The humans' casual attitude toward manipulating entire civilizations was more disturbing than any threat they could have made. Zethkar realized that his crew was looking at beings who thought of themselves as gardeners, and the rest of the galaxy as their garden. Admiral Chen, he said slowly, our mission here was to explore and map the Outer Rim territories. We were following energy signatures that led us to your system. Were those signatures placed there deliberately? Admiral Chen's smile returned. Captain, you are a very intelligent being. Yes, those energy signatures were designed to attract the attention of any Confederation exploration vessel that ventured into this region. We have been hoping for this meeting for quite some time. Why? Because the current galactic cycle is approaching a critical phase. Your Confederation has grown large enough and powerful enough that conflicts are becoming inevitable. The Corvin hegemony is building a military fleet that could threaten multiple systems. The Zeta Syndicate is developing weapons that violate several galactic treaties. The Silicon Collective is expanding into territories claimed by organic species. Dr. Williams brought up new images on her device, showing Confederation military buildups and territorial disputes that Zethkar recognized from recent intelligence reports. Within the next 50 years, Admiral Chen continued, these tensions will likely lead to the first major galactic war since the ancient period. Unless, of course, steps are taken to prevent such an outcome. And you want to take those steps, Zethkar said. We want to work with reasonable beings like yourselves to find better solutions. The Velthari have always been a peaceful and intelligent species. Your people could help us guide the more aggressive civilizations toward less destructive paths. Chief Engineer Bractos leaned back in his chair, his massive frame making the furniture creak. And if we refuse? If we decide that we do not want your guidance? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Admiral Chen's smile never wavered, but something cold and dangerous appeared in her eyes. Engineer Bractos, we very much hope that will not be necessary. Cooperation is always preferable to alternative approaches. Commander Torres gestured toward the debris field visible through the viewports. As you can see, we have had considerable experience dealing with civilizations that choose conflict over cooperation. The results are rarely pleasant for anyone involved. The threat was delivered so politely that it took a moment for its full meaning to sink in. When it did, Zethkar felt as if the deck had dropped out from under his feet. The humans were not just claiming to have watched the ancient wars. They were implying that they had been involved in them. Admiral, he said, his voice barely steady, are you saying that humanity was responsible for the destruction of those ancient civilizations? Such a complicated question, Captain. Were we responsible? Or did those civilizations destroy themselves with weapons and technologies that they were not wise enough to control? We prefer to think that we simply accelerated natural processes that were already in motion. Dr. Colthini's forearms were trembling with shock and fear. The Mordun Empire lasted for over 3,000 years. The Zephyri Dominion controlled half the galaxy. These were not primitive civilizations that destroyed themselves by accident. No, Dr. Williams agreed. They were advanced civilizations that destroyed themselves through pride, greed, and the belief that their way of life was superior to all others. Very much like some of the species in your current confederation. The meeting had moved far beyond first contact protocols and into territory that Zethkar had never been trained to handle. He was looking at beings who claimed to have orchestrated the destruction of entire galactic civilizations and were now threatening to do the same to his own people if they did not cooperate. I think, he said carefully, that this meeting has given us much to consider. Perhaps we should take some time to discuss what we have learned. Of course, Captain, Admiral Chen said, standing up. These are weighty matters that deserve careful thought. But please do not take too long. As I mentioned, events are moving toward a critical phase. Decisions made in the next few years will determine whether the current galactic cycle ends in cooperation or in ashes. As the humans prepared to leave, Commander Torres paused at the conference room door. Captain Zethkar, I hope you will remember that we are not your enemies. We are trying to prevent a war that could destroy everything your people have built. Sometimes the medicine tastes bitter, but it is still medicine. After the humans had left the ship, Zethkar and his crew sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Dr. Colthany spoke. Captain, we have to warn the Confederation. If even half of what they told us is true, humanity represents a threat beyond anything in our historical records. But do they? Chief Engineer Braktos asked. They claim to be preventing wars, not starting them. Maybe they are telling the truth about trying to help. By manipulating us like children? Grunmax growled. By threatening to destroy us if we do not obey? That is not help, that is slavery. Zethkar walked back to the viewport and looked out at the debris field. Somewhere in that vast graveyard of ships and dreams were the remains of civilizations that had once ruled the galaxy. Had they faced the same choice that his crew was facing now? Had they been given the same ultimatum? Cooperate or be destroyed? Prepare a message drone, he said finally. But do not launch it yet. I want to learn more about what we are dealing with before we make any irreversible decisions. Outside the ship, the human vessels maintained their positions, watching and waiting. In the depths of space, sensors that the Confederation could not detect monitored every word spoken aboard the Stellar Harmony. Admiral Chen had been truthful about one thing. They had indeed been expecting this meeting for a very long time. 3 days after the first meeting, Admiral Chen invited Captain Zethkar and his senior staff to tour what she called humanity's archaeological preserve. The invitation had come with detailed coordinates and a promise that they would see things that would help them understand humanity's true role in galactic history. Zethkar had spent those 3 days reviewing every piece of data his crew had gathered. The more they learned about the human technology, the more disturbing it became. Their ships used power sources that should not have been possible to build. Their weapons incorporated designs from at least 12 different extinct civilizations. Most troubling of all, some of the debris in the field showed energy signatures that matched the weapons on the human ships. Captain, Dr. Colthany said as they prepared to depart for the tour, I have been analyzing the wreckage more carefully. Some of these ships show damage patterns that could only have been caused by weapons that did not exist when these civilizations were supposed to have died out. What do you mean? The ethereal collective was destroyed 8,000 years ago according to our historical records. But some of their ships show damage from Zephyri reality warping weapons, which were not developed until 3,000 years later. Either our historical records are completely wrong, or these battles happened much more recently than we thought. Zethkar felt his stomach tighten. Are you saying that some of these civilizations survived longer than our records indicate? I am saying that someone has been collecting ships from different time periods and bringing them all to this location. The question is why. The human shuttle that came to transport them was another example of their impossible technology. It looked like it had been built from components taken from at least 5 different species. But somehow everything worked together perfectly. The pilot, a young human woman named Lieutenant Park, was friendly and talkative as she flew them toward the planet. You are going to love the orbital facilities, she said cheerfully. The Admiral has put together an amazing collection over the years. Some of the stuff we have is so old that nobody remembers how to build it anymore. Chief Engineer Braktos leaned forward in his seat. Lieutenant, how long have you been working with this technology? Me personally? About 15 years. But my family has been involved in the preservation project for generations. My great-great-grandmother helped design some of the early fusion systems we still use today. Fusion systems from which civilization? Lieutenant Park laughed. Oh, we never use technology from just one source. That would be wasteful. Our fusion systems use Mordun containment fields, Zephyri energy conversion matrices, and human control systems, much more efficient than anything the original builders came up with. As they approached the planet, the scale of the human operation became clear. The orbital stations were massive, some of them larger than entire Confederation starbases. But unlike normal space stations, These had clearly been built by taking apart other structures and rebuilding them into new configurations. That station there, Lieutenant Park said, pointing to a particularly large structure, used to be 3 separate ethereal collective research facilities. We moved them here about 2,000 years ago and connected them with our own construction. Now it is our main technology analysis center. You move them? Tactical Officer Gronmax asked. How do you move entire space stations across the galaxy? Very carefully, Lieutenant Park replied with another laugh. And with a lot of really big ships. The shuttle docked with the central station, and Admiral Chen was waiting for them in the airlock. She was wearing a different uniform today, one that seemed to be decorated with symbols from multiple different civilizations. Welcome to Preservation Station Alpha, she said as she led them through corridors that were clearly not built by any single species. The walls showed a mixture of architectural styles, and the lighting system seemed to have been borrowed from at least 3 different technologies. Admiral, Zethkar said as they walked, Lieutenant Park mentioned that some of these facilities were moved here from other locations. How is that possible? Engineering on a scale that your current civilizations have not yet achieved, Admiral Chen replied. When we find something worth preserving, we preserve it. Location is rarely a permanent obstacle. They entered a vast chamber that took Zethkar's breath away. The room was filled with displays showing technology from dozens of different civilizations. Energy weapons, shield generators, faster-than-light drives, artificial intelligence cores, and devices that he could not even begin to identify. This is our main exhibition hall, Admiral Chen explained. Everything you see here represents the best achievements of extinct galactic civilizations. We have spent thousands of years collecting and studying these technologies. Dr. Kolthena moved from display to display, her forearms trembling with excitement and horror. Admiral, some of these devices are from civilizations that supposedly destroyed themselves. How did you obtain them if the civilizations no longer existed? An excellent question, Dr. Kolthene. The answer is that we obtained them before the civilizations destroyed themselves. In many cases, we were the ones who helped preserve the technology when it became clear that the original builders would not survive. Commander Torres, who had been quiet during the tour, stepped forward. Dr. Kolthene, may I show you something particularly interesting? He led them to a display case containing what appeared to be a small device covered in crystalline structures. This is a Zephyri reality manipulation core. According to your historical records, the Zephyri developed this technology shortly before they went extinct, in a war with the Mordan Empire. Yes, Kolthene said. The reality cores were supposed to be the ultimate weapon. They could alter the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area. Indeed they could. Quite dangerous in the wrong hands, which is why we made sure to obtain several working examples before the Zephyri could use them to destroy themselves and everyone around them. Zethkar felt ice forming in his veins. Commander Torres, are you saying that humanity had these devices before the Zephyri used them in their final war? Captain, we had these devices before the Zephyri even knew such things were possible. You see, we were the ones who gave them the basic principles that led to their development. The tour group stopped walking. The implications of what Commander Torres had just said were staggering. You gave them the technology? Chief Engineer Braktos asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We gave many civilizations many technologies, Dr. Williams said, joining the conversation. Knowledge sharing has always been one of humanity's core values. Unfortunately, not all species use the knowledge they receive in wise ways. Admiral Chen gestured for them to continue walking. Let me show you our weapons testing facility. I think it will help illustrate what we mean. They took a transport tube deeper into the station, eventually arriving at a chamber that was obviously designed for dangerous experiments. Through thick transparent barriers, they could see humans working with devices that made Zethkar's tactical training scream warnings at him. This is where we test new combinations of technologies, Admiral Chen explained. For example, we recently finished combining Mordan planet-cracking technology with ethereal collective time dilation fields. The result is a weapon that can destroy a world and make it appear to happen instantly, from the perspective of anyone watching. Why would you build such a thing? Gronmax demanded. Because the Corvin hegemony is currently developing similar technology independently, Commander Torres replied. If they succeed, they will have a weapon that could threaten entire star systems. By developing it ourselves first, we can create countermeasures. Dr. Williams activated a holographic display that showed various alien ship designs. We have been tracking weapons development across all current Confederation species. The results are quite disturbing. The display showed dozens of weapons projects, many of them using technologies that Zethkar recognized as classified Confederation research. How do you know about these projects? Captain, we told you that we have been monitoring your civilizations for centuries. Did you think we were only watching your public activities? They continued the tour, visiting research labs where humans worked with technologies that had destroyed entire galactic civilizations. In one lab, scientists were studying ethereal collective artificial intelligence cores that could allegedly think faster than entire planets full of organic minds. In another, engineers were testing Zephyri reality manipulation devices that could make entire fleets simply stop existing. The pattern should be becoming clear to you, Admiral Chen said as they walked through a facility where humans were building ships using components from at least 8 different extinct civilizations. Every galactic cycle follows the same basic progression. Young civilizations develop, grow, and eventually create technologies that are beyond their wisdom to control. So you decide who lives and who dies? Dr. Coltheny asked. We decide who gets to continue making the same mistakes their predecessors made, and who gets guided toward better choices, Dr. Williams corrected. Sometimes that guidance is accepted willingly. Sometimes it requires more direct intervention. They entered another chamber where human technicians were working on what appeared to be a massive computer system. The technology was clearly not human in origin, but it had been extensively modified and upgraded. This is our Historical Analysis Center, Commander Torres explained. We use it to track the development patterns of civilizations and predict when interventions might become necessary. Zethkar looked at the display screens showing detailed information about every major Confederation species, population numbers, technological development levels, military capabilities, political tensions, resource conflicts. Everything was there. You know more about our civilizations than we know about ourselves, he said. Of course we do, Admiral Chen replied. We have been watching your species develop for longer than your recorded history. We know which technologies you will develop, which conflicts you will face, and which mistakes you are likely to make. Because you have seen it all before. Because we have guided it all before. Captain, the current Confederation is not the first time that multiple species have worked together to explore and develop the galaxy. Similar confederations have formed at least 6 times in the past 50,000 years. And what happened to them? They made the same mistakes that all young civilizations make. They developed weapons they could not control, fought wars they could not win, and eventually destroyed themselves. Just like the Zephyri, the Mordun, the Ethereal Collective, and all the others. Dr. Coltheny was staring at a display showing the complete technological development timeline of her own species. Admiral, this shows that my people developed faster than light travel 50 years earlier than our own historical records indicate. Because we provided certain key insights at critical moments, Dr. Williams explained. Without our guidance, the Mordan would have taken another century to develop FTL technology. By then, they would have missed the opportunity to join the early Confederation. You manipulated our entire history. We guided your development toward outcomes that would allow you to participate in galactic civilization instead of destroying yourselves in isolation. The Mordan tendency toward obsessive research would have led you to develop extremely dangerous technologies if left unchecked. Chief Engineer Braktos was examining a display showing the engineering principles behind various extinct civilization technologies. Admiral, these designs show clear evidence of human modification. You did not just preserve these technologies, you improved them. Naturally, the original builders were working under the pressure of warfare and survival. They rarely had time to perfect their designs. We have had thousands of years to refine and improve their work. To what end? Admiral Chen led them to a final chamber, where they could see the construction of what appeared to be a massive warship. The vessel was being built using components from every extinct civilization they had encountered, plus technologies that Zethkar did not recognize at all. To the end of ensuring that the current galactic cycle does not repeat the mistakes of its predecessors, she said. That ship, when completed, will be capable of defeating any fleet that any current Confederation species could build. It is one of several hundred similar vessels that we have constructed over the past few thousand years. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Humanity had not just been collecting the technologies of extinct civilizations. They had been building a military force using the combined knowledge of every species that had ever achieved galactic power. "You are preparing for war," Grandmax said. "We are preparing to prevent war," Commander Torres corrected. "When the Corvin hegemony launches their planned invasion of the Zeta Syndicate territories, our fleet will be in position to stop them before the conflict can escalate. When the Silicon Collective attempts to claim organic worlds for their expansion, we will redirect them toward uninhabited systems. And if we refuse to accept your guidance?" Admiral Chen turned to face him, and for the first time since they had met, her diplomatic mask slipped completely. What Zethkar saw underneath was the expression of a being who had made decisions that killed entire civilizations and felt no regret about it. "Captain, look around you. Every piece of technology in this facility came from a species that chose conflict over cooperation. Every weapon we have studied was built by beings who thought they could solve their problems through force. Every ship in our fleet was constructed using knowledge, taken from civilizations that believed they were too strong to be defeated." She gestured toward the construction bay where the massive warship was taking shape. "We have been building this fleet for thousands of years using the best technologies from dozens of extinct civilizations. Do you really think that any current galactic power could stand against us if we decided that cooperation was no longer possible?" The tour was over, but as Lieutenant Park flew them back to their ship, Zethkar realized that everything had changed. They were no longer explorers who had stumbled upon an unknown civilization. They were witnesses to the true power structure of the galaxy, and they had been given a choice that was no choice at all. Cooperate with humanity's plans for the future of galactic civilization, or join the graveyard of species that had chosen differently. As the stellar harmony came into view, surrounded by the debris field of extinct civilizations, Zethkar understood that every piece of wreckage around them represented the same decision he now faced. Every destroyed ship had once carried beings who thought they could resist the humans' vision of galactic order. None of them had been strong enough to make that resistance work. The question now was whether the current Confederation would be any different, or whether they would simply become the newest addition to humanity's vast collection of failed civilizations. That night, Dr. Colthene could not sleep. The images from the human facility kept running through her mind. Technologies from extinct civilizations, weapons that could destroy planets, and the casual way the humans had spoken about guiding the development of entire species. She had been a scientist for most of her life, dedicated to discovering truth and expanding knowledge. What she had seen that day challenged everything she believed about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. At 300 ship time, she made a decision that would change everything. Working quietly in her laboratory, she began preparing a detailed report of everything they had discovered, not just the official first contact documentation that Captain Zethkar would eventually send to Confederation headquarters, but a complete analysis of the human technology, their military capabilities, and most importantly, their admission that they had been manipulating galactic civilizations for thousands of years. The Confederation needed to know what they were dealing with. Even if it meant starting a war, the member species had a right to know that their entire history had been guided by beings who saw them as children, to be managed rather than equals to be respected. She worked for 3 hours, carefully documenting every detail she could remember and analyzing every scan they had taken of human technology. When she was finished, she had a comprehensive report that painted humanity as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. Now she just needed to transmit it. Colthene made her way to the communications center, moving quietly through the ship's corridors. She had legitimate access to the long-range communication systems as part of her duties as science officer, so there should be no questions about her being there. She activated the quantum entanglement transmitter and began encoding her report for transmission to Confederation Science Command. The process would take several minutes, during which time the ship's communication systems would be focused entirely on creating the quantum tunnel needed for faster-than-light communication. What she did not know was that every action she had taken since leaving her quarters had been monitored by sensors that her species' technology could not detect. As her finger moved toward the transmission activation button, the lights in the communications center suddenly dimmed. A voice spoke from speakers that should not have been active. "Dr. Colthene, Please step away from the communication console. She spun around to find Admiral Chen standing in the doorway, flanked by two human soldiers she had not seen before. They were wearing armor that seemed to bend light around it, making them difficult to focus on directly. Admiral, how did you get aboard our ship? The same way we have been monitoring your conversations for the past week, Admiral Chen replied, stepping into the room. Dr. Colthin, you are a brilliant scientist, but you are thinking like a being who believes that her technology represents the pinnacle of galactic achievement. It does not. Colthin looked at the communication console where her report was still waiting to be transmitted. You cannot stop me from warning my people about what you are. Actually, I can. But more importantly, I can explain why doing so would be the worst mistake in the history of your species. Admiral Chen activated a portable holographic projector, and the room filled with images that made Colthini's breath catch in her throat. They were star maps, but not like any she had ever seen. These maps showed the galaxy as it had existed thousands of years ago, with hundreds of civilizations spread across the stars. This is what the galaxy looked like during the peak of the last major cycle, Admiral Chen explained. 47 different spacefaring civilizations with a combined population of over 3 trillion beings. They had formed their own confederation, much like your current one. They believed in cooperation, peaceful exploration, and the sharing of knowledge. The images changed, showing massive space battles and the destruction of entire star systems. This is what happened when that confederation discovered that they were being watched and guided by an older species. They declared war, united in their outrage at being manipulated. The war lasted for 800 years and ended with every single one of those civilizations extinct. Colthine stared at the images, her forearms trembling. You are lying. You are trying to frighten me. I am trying to save your species from making a mistake that has been made before, Admiral Chen corrected. Dr. Colthany, your report is very thorough. You have correctly identified humanity as a species that has been manipulating galactic development for thousands of years. You have accurately assessed our military capabilities as far superior to anything the current Confederation possesses. You have even deduced that we were responsible for the destruction of previous galactic civilizations. Then, you know I have to warn them. What I know is that sending that warning will trigger a series of events that will end with the complete destruction of every species in the current Confederation. Not because we want that to happen, but because your civilizations will make the same choice that their predecessors made. Admiral Chen manipulated the holographic display, showing what appeared to be detailed battle plans. Within 6 months of receiving your warning, the Confederation Council will authorize the development of new weapons designed specifically to fight humanity. The Corvin hegemony will begin building planet-killer missiles using stolen ethereal collective technology. The Zeta Syndicate will attempt to create reality-warping weapons based on incomplete Zephyri designs. The images showed the progression of events with terrifying clarity. Within 2 years, the first test of a Confederation superweapon will accidentally destroy an inhabited system, killing 6 billion beings. The psychological trauma of that event will drive the Confederation to even more desperate measures. They will begin experimenting with technologies that they do not understand, in their desperation to match our capabilities. And you will just let this happen? Dr. Colthine, we will try to prevent it just as we have tried to prevent similar catastrophes in the past. But there are limits to what even we can do when an entire galactic civilization becomes determined to destroy itself out of fear and pride. The holographic display changed again, showing images that Colthine recognized as Confederation member worlds. But these images showed those worlds as they would look after centuries of warfare, burned, empty, lifeless. This is the inevitable result of the path you are choosing, Admiral Chen said quietly. We have seen it happen 6 times before. Each time we hoped that the younger civilizations would make different choices. Each time they chose pride over survival. Colthany looked at the communication console where her report waited. Everything Admiral Chen was saying could be lies, designed to make her abandon her duty to warn her people. But the images looked real, and the technology needed to create such detailed simulations was beyond anything the Confederation possessed. Why should I believe you? Because Dr. Colthane, you are a scientist. Look at the evidence. Admiral Chen activated another series of displays. These are the communication records from the last Galactic Confederation, recovered from their ruins. Watch how they reacted when they discovered our existence. The record showed meetings very similar to the one that had taken place aboard the Stellar Harmony, alien beings arguing about whether to trust the older species that had been guiding them, whether to accept their help or resist their influence. They made the same choice you are considering, Admiral Chen continued. They decided that no species had the right to guide others, regardless of the consequences. They united in their determination to resist us, and they died for it. Maybe they were right to resist. Maybe freedom is worth dying for. Maybe it is. But Dr. Coltheny, is freedom worth taking 3 trillion other beings with you when you die? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Coltheny realized that this was not just about her choice or even her species' choice. It was about the future of every intelligent being in the galaxy. There has to be another way, she said. There is. Work with us instead of against us. Help us guide your civilizations toward choices that will allow them to survive and prosper. Accept that some freedoms must be limited in order to preserve life itself. And if we refuse, Admiral Chen deactivated the holographic display and looked directly at Coltheny. Then in 50 years, when archaeologists from the next galactic cycle find the ruins of your civilizations, they will wonder why such advanced beings chose to destroy themselves rather than accept help from those who were trying to save them. At that moment, Captain Zethkar's voice came over the ship's communication system. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Admiral Chen gestured toward the door. After you, Dr. Coltheny. I believe your captain has discovered that we have been monitoring your ship's activities. They made their way to the bridge, where Zethkar was standing in front of the main view screen with an expression of barely controlled fury. Chief Engineer Braktos and Tactical Officer Gronmax were at their stations, running system diagnostics. Captain, Admiral Chen said as she entered the bridge, I apologize for the intrusion, but Dr. Coltheny was about to make a decision that would have had unfortunate consequences for everyone involved. You have been spying on us, Zethkar said. For how long? Since the moment you entered this system. Captain, your ship is equipped with technology that is approximately 3,000 years behind what we consider current. Monitoring your activities without your knowledge is not particularly difficult. Gronmax looked up from his tactical station. Captain, I am detecting at least 50 human ships surrounding us. They were not there an hour ago. They were there, Admiral Chen corrected. You simply lack the sensor capability to detect them. Captain Zethkar, you are facing the same choice that 47 other galactic civilizations have faced in the past. You can work with us to build a better future for your species, or you can choose pride over survival. Those are not the only options, Zethkar said. Actually, Captain, they are. Dr. Coltheny, would you please tell your captain what you learned about the consequences of resistance? Coltheny looked around the bridge at her colleagues, beings she had worked with for years, trusted with her life, considered as close as family. The choice she made in the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the fate of every being in the Confederation. Captain, she said slowly, Admiral Chen has shown me historical records of what happened to previous galactic civilizations that discovered humanity's role in their development. They all chose to resist. They all united against humanity, and they all died. Those records could be fabricated. They could be. But Captain, the technology we have seen, the weapons they possess, the ships they have built, even if they are lying about their motivations, they clearly have the power to destroy us all. Chief Engineer Braktos looked up from his console. Captain, I have been analyzing the energy signatures from the human ships. Each one is carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet, and there are hundreds of them just in this system. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They were not just dealing with a hidden civilization. They were facing a military force that could destroy the entire Confederation without significant effort. Admiral Chen, Zethkar said finally, what exactly are you asking of us? I am asking you to return to Confederation space and convince your leaders that cooperation with humanity is in their best interests. Help us prevent the wars that are coming. Accept our guidance in developing technologies that will not destroy you. In return, we will help your civilizations reach levels of advancement that would otherwise take millions of years to achieve. And if the Confederation refuses, then the Confederation will follow the same path as every other galactic civilization that has refused our help. We will try to minimize the damage, but we will not allow your species to develop weapons that could threaten the galaxy itself. Tactical Officer Gronmax stood up from his station. "Admiral, you speak as if you have the right to make decisions for entire civilizations. What gives you that authority?" "The same thing that gives a parent the right to take dangerous objects away from a child, Officer Gronmax. Age, experience, and the wisdom that comes from watching too many children hurt themselves with things they do not understand. We are not children. No, you are not. You are intelligent, capable beings who have achieved remarkable things in your short time on the galactic stage. But you are also beings who are about to repeat mistakes that have been made before, because you do not have access to the historical perspective that would allow you to make better choices." Admiral Chen moved to the center of the bridge. "Captain Zethkar, in 6 months, the Corvin hegemony will launch an attack on Zeta Syndicate territory. The attack will fail, but it will trigger a chain of retaliations that will eventually involve every Confederation member. Within 5 years, you will be facing the same kind of galactic war that destroyed the previous cycle." "How can you know that?" "Because we have been monitoring the development of tensions between your species for decades. Because we have seen this same pattern play out multiple times before. And because some of the weapons your civilizations are currently developing are the same ones that destroyed their predecessors." The Admiral activated her portable holographic projector one more time, showing a detailed timeline of projected events. "This is what will happen if current trends continue. This is what we are trying to prevent." Zethkar studied the projection carefully. If it was accurate, the Confederation was heading toward disaster regardless of what humanity did. The question was whether they would face that disaster alone, or with the help of beings who claimed to have prevented similar catastrophes in the past. "Admiral," he said finally, "I need time to consider what you have told us." "Of course, Captain. But please remember that time is a luxury that may be in shorter supply than you realize. Events are already in motion that will be difficult to stop." As Admiral Chen prepared to leave the bridge, she paused at the door. "Captain Zethkar, I want you to know that we do not enjoy being the guardians of galactic civilization. It would be much easier for us to remain hidden and let events take their natural course, but we have seen too many civilizations destroy themselves to stand by and watch it happen again. Then why not reveal yourselves openly? Why all the secrecy and manipulation?" "Because, Captain, every time we have tried open cooperation, the younger civilizations have eventually decided that they no longer need our guidance. And every time they have made that decision, they have destroyed themselves trying to prove that they were strong enough to stand alone." After the humans left, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Dr. Colthany spoke. "Captain, I think we need to consider the possibility that they are telling the truth." "Even if they are," Gronmax growled, "that does not give them the right to control our destiny." "But if the alternative is extinction," Chief Engineer Bractos said quietly, "then maybe control is preferable to death." Zethkar looked out at the debris field surrounding his ship, the remains of civilizations that had faced the same choice his crew was facing now. Had they chosen pride over survival? Had they chosen freedom over life? Or had they simply been unlucky enough to encounter humanity during one of their less diplomatic periods? "Prepare the message drone," he said finally. "But do not program it with a destination yet. I want to think about what message we are going to send and who we are going to send it to." Outside the ship, the human fleet waited patiently for his decision. They had been waiting for thousands of years. They could wait a little longer. Captain Zethkar stood alone in his quarters, staring at the message drone that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. 3 days had passed since Admiral Chen's final ultimatum, and his crew remained divided on what choice to make. The weight of billions of lives rested on a decision that no single being should ever have to make. Dr. Colthany supported working with humanity, arguing that cooperation was preferable to extinction. Chief Engineer Bractos agreed, believing that humanity's advanced technology could benefit all species if properly shared. But Tactical Officer Gronmax and several other crew members insisted that freedom was worth any price, even death. The drone contained 2 different messages. One would warn the Confederation about humanity's hidden control over galactic civilization and recommend immediate preparation for war. The other would suggest that the Confederation consider establishing formal diplomatic relations with humanity, presenting them as potential allies rather than hidden manipulators. Zethkar had spent hours crafting both messages, knowing that whichever one he sent would shape the future of every intelligent species in the galaxy. But as he reached for the activation controls, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Captain, to the bridge immediately," came Lieutenant Valina's urgent voice over the communication system. "We have multiple contacts approaching from outside the system." Zethkar rushed to the bridge to find his crew working frantically at their stations. The main view screen showed dozens of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. But these were not human vessels. They were Confederation ships from multiple species. "Report," Zethkar ordered. "Sir, we have 43 Confederation vessels entering the system," Valina announced. "I am reading ships from the Corvin Hegemony, the Zeta Syndicate, the Silicon Collective, and at least 6 other member species. How did they find us?" "Unknown, Captain. They are not responding to our communications." Dr. Coltheny looked up from her science station, her forearms moving rapidly across the controls. "Captain, I am detecting weapons charging on multiple ships. These are not exploration vessels, this is a military fleet." Before Zethkar could respond, the communication system activated, and Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Zethkar, I apologize for the interruption, but it appears that your decision time has been shortened considerably." "Admiral, what is happening?" "Your Confederation has apparently discovered our existence through other means. 3 days ago, one of our observation posts was detected by a Corvin patrol. Rather than attempting to establish communication, the Corvin immediately classified us as a threat and began organizing a military response." The main view screen changed to show the approaching Confederation fleet in detail. Zethkar could see that many of the ships had been modified with weapons and technologies that he did not recognize. "Captain," Admiral Chen continued, "your people have spent the past 3 days preparing for war. They have combined technologies from multiple species to create weapons specifically designed to fight an enemy with superior capabilities. What they do not realize is that they are about to trigger the same cycle of destruction that has consumed every previous galactic civilization. Can you stop them? We can defeat them, certainly. But, Captain, this fleet represents the combined military might of 7 different Confederation species. If we destroy it, those species will interpret our actions as an act of war against the entire Confederation. The cycle of retaliation and escalation will begin, just as it has before." Tactical Officer Gronmax looked up from his station. "Captain, the Confederation fleet is assuming attack formation. They appear to be targeting the human orbital stations." "Admiral," Zethkar said urgently, "you have to give me time to talk to them. Let me explain what we have learned. Maybe I can convince them that cooperation is possible. Captain, look at their ships. Really look at them." Zethkar studied the tactical display more carefully and felt his heart sink. The Confederation vessels had been equipped with weapons that looked suspiciously similar to some of the extinct civilization technologies they had seen in the human facilities. "Where did they get those weapons?" he asked. "From the ruins of the civilizations that we have been studying," Admiral Chen replied. "Over the past few days, Confederation science teams have been analyzing wreckage from ancient battlefields throughout the galaxy. They have reverse-engineered weapons that destroyed entire star systems, and they are preparing to use them against us." Dr. Coltini's voice was barely a whisper. "They are using the same technologies that destroyed the previous galactic cycles." "Yes, Dr. Colthini. And they will achieve the same results." The communication system crackled, and a new voice filled the bridge, harsh, militaristic, and speaking in the language of the Corvin hegemony. "Unknown vessels. This is Fleet Admiral Torvek of the Confederation Defense Force. You are in violation of galactic space and are suspected of hostile activities against member species. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Zethkar stepped forward. "Admiral Torvik, this is Captain Zethkar of the exploration vessel Stellar Harmony. I'm transmitting diplomatic credentials. We need to talk before any aggressive actions are taken." "Captain Zethkar?" Torvik's voice carried surprise and suspicion. "You were reported missing 3 weeks ago. Are you being held against your will?" "No, Admiral. We are conducting first contact procedures with a previously unknown civilization. I strongly recommend that you hold your current position while we establish proper diplomatic protocols. Captain, our intelligence indicates that these beings have been conducting surveillance operations against Confederation space for decades. They represent a clear threat to galactic security." Before Zethkar could respond, the tactical display suddenly filled with new contacts. Hundreds of human ships were decloaking throughout the system, surrounding the Confederation fleet completely. "My gods," Lieutenant Velina whispered. "Where did they all come from?" Admiral Chen's voice returned to the communication channel, but now she was broadcasting to both fleets. "Fleet Admiral Torvek, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. Your ships are currently surrounded and outgunned by a ratio of approximately 10 to 1. I strongly recommend that you consider diplomatic solutions to this situation." "Human?" Torvek's voice carried confusion. "There is no species called human in the Confederation databases." "That is correct, Admiral. We have remained hidden while your civilizations developed. Unfortunately, circumstances have forced us to reveal ourselves earlier than we had planned." The Confederation fleet began to spread out, clearly preparing for battle despite being outnumbered. On the tactical display, Zethkar could see weapons charging on ships from both fleets. "Admiral Chen," he said urgently, "let me transfer to one of the Confederation ships. Maybe I can convince them to stand down." "Captain Admiral Torvek has already made his decision. Look at your tactical readings." Zethkar checked his displays and felt his blood freeze. The Confederation ships were not just preparing to fight. They were preparing to use weapons that would destroy everything in the system, including themselves. "They are charging reality-warping weapons," Dr. Colthine announced, her voice filled with horror. "Captain, those weapons could tear holes in space-time itself." "Admiral Torvek," Zethkar called out desperately, "you do not understand what those weapons will do. They destroyed the civilizations that built them. You have to stand down. Captain Zethkar, these beings have been spying on us for decades. They have technologies that could destroy our entire civilization. We cannot allow them to continue their operations. But Admiral, they are trying to help us avoid the mistakes that destroyed previous galactic civilizations." "Previous civilizations? Captain, what exactly have these beings told you?" Zethkar realized that he had seconds to explain thousands of years of galactic history to a military commander who was already convinced that humanity represented an existential threat. "Admiral, the debris field around us contains the remains of multiple galactic confederations that developed over the past 50,000 years. Each one destroyed itself using weapons similar to the ones you are now preparing to use. The humans have been trying to prevent us from making the same mistakes by spying on us and manipulating our development." "Captain, you sound like you have been brainwashed." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the argument. "Fleet Admiral Torvek, Captain Zethkar is telling you the truth. The weapons you are preparing to use will destroy not just my fleet, but your own ships and potentially several star systems. Please reconsider. We will not be intimidated by threats. Admiral, this is not a threat. It is a warning based on historical experience. The Zephyri used similar weapons against the Mordun Empire 8,000 years ago. The result was the complete destruction of both civilizations. Lies designed to make us hesitate while you prepare your own attack." On the tactical display, weapon signatures were spiking throughout both fleets. The human ships were clearly more advanced, but the Confederation vessels were preparing to use weapons that could destroy everything, regardless of technological superiority. "Captain Zethkar," Admiral Chen said privately, "I am going to give you one chance to save your people. We are transmitting the complete historical records of the previous galactic cycles to your ship. Upload them to your message drone and launch it toward Confederation space. Maybe your people will listen to evidence that they cannot dismiss as human propaganda. What about the fleet here? Captain, this situation is already beyond saving. Admiral Torvek has made his choice and we must make ours. The question is whether this tragedy will be limited to the beings present, or whether it will spread to consume entire civilizations." Zethkar looked around his bridge at crew members who had become family over years of exploration. Together, Dr. Colthine was frantically downloading the historical data that Admiral Chen was transmitting. Chief Engineer Braktos was preparing the message drone for immediate launch. Tactical Officer Gronmax was watching the weapon signatures with the expression of a soldier who knew that death was approaching. "Captain," Colthine announced, "the data transfer is complete. The message drone is ready for launch." "Sir," Lieutenant Velina called out, "the Confederation fleet is moving to attack positions. Admiral Torvek is demanding our immediate surrender." Zethkar made his choice. "Launch the drone toward Confederation space. Maximum speed. Include our complete mission logs and the historical data Admiral Chen provided." "Yes, sir." The message drone shot away from the stellar harmony just as the first weapons began firing. Reality-warping beams from the Confederation ships struck human vessels, causing some of them to simply cease existing. But the human response was immediate and devastating. Weapons that incorporated technologies from dozens of extinct civilizations struck the Confederation fleet. Ships that had taken decades to build were reduced to expanding clouds of particles in seconds. The space around them filled with energy discharges that made the view screen automatically dim to protect the crew's vision. "Captain," Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system one last time. "I want you to know that we truly tried to find a better way. Please make sure that your people understand that this did not have to happen." The stellar harmony shook as shock waves from the battle reached them. Through the viewports they could see both fleets destroying each other with weapons that should never have been built. "Captain," Dr. Colthena said quietly, "the message drone has successfully transitioned to faster-than-light travel. It should reach Confederation space in approximately 6 days. Will it make a difference?" "I do not know, sir, but at least our people will have the truth." The battle raged for 3 more hours. When it was over, the debris field around them had been joined by the remains of both the Confederation fleet and most of the human ships. Only a few vessels from each side had survived, and those were too damaged to continue fighting. In the days that followed, as rescue ships from both sides arrived to collect survivors, Zethkar learned that the battle had indeed been just the beginning. The destruction of the Confederation fleet had been interpreted as an act of war, triggering the exact response that Admiral Chen had predicted. Across the galaxy, member species were developing weapons designed to fight humanity. Ancient technologies were being reverse-engineered and combined in ways that their original builders had never intended. The message drone reached Confederation space 6 days after the battle, carrying with it the complete records of humanity's role in galactic history and the evidence of what had happened to previous civilizations. But instead of promoting understanding, the information only increased the fear and determination of the member species. Within weeks, every major Confederation world was mobilizing for what military leaders were calling the War for Galactic Freedom. The irony was not lost on Zethkar. In their desperation to remain free, his people were building weapons that would ultimately destroy them. 3 months after the battle, Zethkar received a final communication from Admiral Chen. She was aboard one of the few remaining human command ships, coordinating what she called damage control operations throughout the galaxy. "Captain," her image said from the communication screen, "I wanted you to know that we have been monitoring the Confederation's military buildup. Despite our best efforts to prevent it, your people are following the same path as their predecessors." "Is there still time to stop this?" Zethkar asked. "There is always time, Captain, until there is not. But I fear that your people have moved beyond the point where they will accept any solution that involves cooperation with us. They see us as the enemy, and they will continue to see us that way until they have either destroyed us or destroyed themselves trying." "What will you do?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. "What we have always done, Captain. We will try to preserve what we can. We will collect the technologies and knowledge that should not be lost, and we will prepare for the next cycle." "The next cycle?" "Captain Zethkar, this galaxy has seen intelligent life rise and fall many times. Each cycle brings new species, new civilizations, new hope that perhaps this time will be different. But the fundamental patterns remain the same. Intelligence leads to technology, technology leads to power, and power leads to the belief that force can solve all problems." The communication screen showed images of Confederation worlds where massive weapons were being constructed. Planet killers, reality warpers, time distortion devices. Every forbidden technology that had ever existed was being rebuilt by beings who believed that their cause justified any means. "Your people will test these weapons soon," Admiral Chen continued. "The first test will succeed, giving them confidence. The second test will cause unexpected side effects. The third test will destroy the system where it takes place, along with everyone in it. But by then it will be too late to stop the momentum." "How can you know this?" "Because we have seen it happen before, Captain. The pattern is always the same. Fear leads to desperation. Desperation leads to dangerous experiments. And dangerous experiments lead to catastrophic accidents that make the fear worse." Zethkar looked out at the debris field that surrounded his ship, the remains of civilizations that had made the same choices his people were making now. "Is there really no way to break the cycle?" "There is, Captain. but it requires something that young civilizations find almost impossible to accept. What? Humility. The willingness to admit that you do not know everything, that you are not the first beings to face these challenges, and that those who came before you might have learned something worth listening to. The transmission showed Admiral Chen standing on the bridge of her ship, surrounded by the same advanced technology that Zethkar had seen during his tour of the human facilities. But now he could see the weight of thousands of years in her expression. Captain, when this cycle ends, and it will end, there will be survivors. There always are, young species on primitive worlds, beings who have not yet developed the technologies that lead to destruction. We will watch over them, guide them when we can, and hope that perhaps they will make better choices than their predecessors. And the current Confederation? We'll join the graveyard that surrounds your ship, not because we want them to, but because they will choose pride over survival, just as every previous civilization has done. The communication was interrupted by alarms from the bridge of Zethkar's ship. Lieutenant Velina's voice came over the internal communication system. Captain, we are receiving emergency transmissions from multiple Confederation worlds. It appears that the first test of the new superweapons has taken place. Zethkar felt his heart sink. Where? The Altair system, Captain. Home to over 2 billion Zeta Syndicate colonists. What happened? The system is gone, sir. The star went nova. There are no survivors. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. She had clearly been expecting this news. And so it begins again, Captain. Within days your people will blame us for the destruction of Altair, even though we were nowhere near the system when it happened. They will use the tragedy to justify even more desperate measures. Can't you prove that you weren't responsible? Captain, we have been trying to prove our good intentions for thousands of years. It never matters. When beings are afraid enough, they will believe any explanation that allows them to blame someone else for their problems. Over the following months, Zethkar watched helplessly as the galaxy tore itself apart. The destruction of the Altair system had indeed been blamed on humanity, leading to accelerated weapons development throughout Confederation space. More tests were conducted, leading to more accidents, more deaths, and more desperate attempts to create weapons powerful enough to defeat the hidden human fleet. Meanwhile, humanity fought back with technologies that the current civilizations could barely comprehend. Entire star systems were cut off from the rest of the galaxy by reality distortions. Confederation fleets would arrive at strategic locations only to find that the systems they were trying to protect had been moved to different coordinates. Weapons that should have destroyed planets instead passed harmlessly through them as if they were made of light. But the most devastating human tactic was the simplest. They began revealing the truth about how previous civilizations had destroyed themselves. Archaeological evidence, historical records, and detailed analyses of ancient weapons were transmitted to every Confederation world, showing exactly how the current crisis would end if it continued. Instead of promoting peace, this information only increased the panic, knowing that they were following the same path that had led to the destruction of previous civilizations, made the current species more desperate, not more careful. 2 years after the first battle, Dr. Colthine approached Zethkar with a proposal that would have been unthinkable when their mission began. Captain, she said, I have been analyzing the patterns of destruction throughout galactic history. There is a mathematical progression that seems to govern how these cycles develop. Based on that progression, I believe I can predict when and how the current crisis will reach its climax. And 18 months from now, the Confederation will attempt to use a combination of Zephyri reality warping, technology, and Morden planet cracking systems to create a weapon capable of destroying humanity's hidden bases throughout the galaxy. The test of this weapon will accidentally create a cascade reaction that will destroy approximately 40% of the galaxy's habitable worlds. Zethkar stared at her in horror. 40%? The mathematical models are quite clear, Captain. The interaction between reality warping fields and conventional matter at galactic scales creates feedback loops that amplify destruction, far beyond what the original weapon designers intended. Have you shared this analysis with anyone else? Only with Admiral Chen. She confirmed that my calculations match their own projections. What did she say? That they will begin evacuating the species they consider worth preserving to hidden colonies outside the galaxy. They estimate that they can save perhaps 5% of the current galactic population before the cascade reaction begins. The full implications of what Colthany was saying slowly sank in. Humanity was not preparing to win the war. They were preparing to survive it and rebuild afterward. Dr. Colthany, are we included in that 5%? Yes, Captain. Admiral Chen has offered sanctuary to our crew and any other Confederation beings who are willing to accept their protection. But the offer comes with conditions. What conditions? We would have to agree to help them guide the next cycle of galactic civilization. To use our knowledge of how the current crisis developed to prevent the same mistakes from being repeated. Sethkar walked to the viewport and looked out at the debris field that had become his constant companion over the past 2 years. New wreckage had been added regularly as the war intensified. Pieces of both Confederation and human ships destroyed in battles throughout the galaxy. How many of our crew would accept such an offer? I have spoken with everyone privately. About half are willing to consider it. The others believe that accepting human protection would make us complicit in the destruction of our own civilizations. And what do you believe, Dr. Colthany? She was quiet for a long moment. I believe that survival is more important than pride, Captain. And I believe that if we do not help humanity guide the next cycle, then billions of future beings will face the same impossible choices that we are facing now. That night, Sethkar made his final decision as captain of the Stellar Harmony. He sent a message to Admiral Chen accepting her offer of sanctuary, but only for those crew members who chose to come willingly. The response came within hours. A human transport ship would arrive in 3 days to collect anyone who wanted to leave. Those who remained would be given a choice. They could take the Stellar Harmony and attempt to return to Confederation space, or they could stay and witness the end of the current galactic cycle from a safe distance. When the time came, exactly half of his crew chose to leave with the humans. Dr. Colthany was among them, as was Lieutenant Velina and several others. Chief Engineer Braktos and Tactical Officer Gronmax chose to stay, along with the rest. As Sethkar watched the human transport disappear into faster-than-light travel, he realized that he had just witnessed the beginning of the next phase of humanity's long guardianship of the galaxy. Those who left would become part of the system that would guide whatever civilizations emerged from the ashes of the current one. 18 months later, exactly as Dr. Colthany had predicted, the Confederation's ultimate weapon was tested. The cascade reaction that followed destroyed 43% of the galaxy's habitable worlds and left, the rest too damaged to support advanced civilization. Sethkar and the remaining crew of the Stellar Harmony watched it happen from their position at the edge of the galaxy, surrounded by the debris of previous civilizations that had made the same choice. As the wave of destruction spread across the stars, he finally understood what Admiral Chen had been trying to tell him from the beginning. The galaxy was not ruled by the strongest or the most advanced species. It was ruled by the species that had learned to think in longer terms than a single lifetime, a single generation, or even a single civilization. Humanity had become the gardeners of galactic civilization not through conquest, but through patience. They had learned to accept losses that would devastate any other species, to make plans that spanned millennia, and to preserve knowledge and life even when preservation meant allowing terrible things to happen. As the last communications from Confederation space fell silent, Sethkar received a final message from Dr. Colthany. She was now working with humanity's restoration teams, preparing to seed new worlds with the genetic material and cultural knowledge of extinct species. Captain, her message said, I wanted you to know that the next cycle will be different. We are going to try new approaches, new ways of guiding development that might prevent the same mistakes from being repeated, but it will take thousands of years to know if we have succeeded. I also wanted you to know that your choice to remain with the ship is being recorded in the historical archives. Future civilizations will learn about beings who chose to witness the consequences of their actions rather than flee from them. Perhaps that knowledge will help them make better choices. Sethkar looked out at the debris field one final time. Tomorrow, he and his remaining crew would begin the long journey toward whatever remained of Confederation space, carrying with them the story of humanity's role in galactic history and the warning that pride was a luxury that no civilization could afford. Behind them, at the edge of the galaxy, humanity's hidden fleets were already beginning to emerge from their concealment. The cleanup would take centuries, but eventually, new species would develop on the surviving worlds. They would build civilizations, explore the stars, and eventually face the same choices that had destroyed their predecessors. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity would be watching, waiting, and hoping that this time, things would be different. But at the edge of the galactic map, surrounded by the remains of civilizations that had burned to ashes because they could not accept guidance from those who knew better, Zethkar suspected that the cycle would continue. It would continue until some species finally learned the hardest lesson of all, that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to use it. The galaxy belonged to those who could wait,